Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we were working on getting our core module set up here, and I do still want to be working on this. I just realized we've got a problem here. And that problem is we need to flip around this decoupler and this cubic octagonal strut. The decoupler needs to go here, and then the cubic octagonal strut goes here, and then this goes here. And then just to be on the safe side, let's run some strut connectors, not like that. Let's run this from about here to about here. That's in bicoupling? Okay, let's just put another pair from here to here. There we go. That should be much stronger now, in theory. And now we need to lift this, right? So, in theory, this is enough fuel to get us to Duna, right? So, let's see here. This is very incorrect on the staging, that's for sure. So yeah, all of that is absolutely fine up there for now. This needs to go down, like, here, approximately. And then this can go here. Okay, so stage 3. This has got 1,018 meters per second, and then these would detach, and we would have additional fuel here. But of course, this is not currently running a fuel line in. So what I want to do right now is I want to run a strut connector from, and this is in bicoupling, that seems fine, from here to here. And then I also want to run a strut from here to here. Then let's do a fuel line from here to here. We technically don't need a fuel line, but it'll make things a lot more convenient for us. So, stage 3. This is going to be 1,788 meters per second. Stage 2 is claiming to be 2,392. So that should be quite a lot of dB. That's not a problem. Now we need to deliver this. So, we need to ask the question, do we want to liquid fuel this, or do we want to solid fuel this for our side boosters? Our center core is obviously going to be liquid fueled. Let's start with some big orange tanks, and we'll see where this puts us. We'll of course make them orange because orange is better, and we'll just move this up a little bit. That'll be fine. So we're going to put a mainsail on here almost certainly, and the question is, what is this thrust to weight right here? 0.86. Okay. So this is not going to be attached via decouplers up here. The decoupling system is going to go this way. So we're just using the same stack. If we were to bring in solid rocket motors, this would be like a pair of Polluxes, but even those are a little on the small side for this. I don't suppose we have larger ones. Clydesdales? I mean, that would do the trick. We could even toss in some extra fuel here. Have this be about a 32 or so. That's a theoretical possibility. So it'd be about like this. Then I'd like to move these down a little bit further and have like a pair of 16s right up over here. Yeah, about like that. And then we'll run a fuel line, and these 16s should be burned out before these Clydesdales are. We'll test that here in a moment. But I want to run a fuel line from here to here, and then we're going to make sure that this is all strutted together in a reasonable way, right? So we absolutely are going to need struts on the bottom here, and I'm also going to put a pair of struts about at the halfway marker, about here or so, and that should be reasonably strutted together. So, this is, at this time, at a thrust-to-weight ratio of 1.52. So that's a little bit low, no doubt about that. Let's put this out on the pad in a simulated test, and let's see how this first stage performs. I suspect we're going to have some issues with it. Aerodynamics are likely going to be a significant problem here. We'll see how that feels. And we're interested in fuel timings here and here. We also need to check our staging here. Staging actually looks good. So no problem with the staging, and I don't think that... I think these should be white, just to match the rest of this. That seems okay. So that seems absolutely fine for now. Let's see what this looks like. I'm concerned about the thrust to weight of the center core once the SRBs detach. I am concerned about fuel timings, and I'm concerned about aerodynamics and not being able to hold attitude once our gravity turn starts. We'll see how all of that feels. It'll be real interesting. So I'll put this in surface up to start with, and let's throttle this up, and let's do a simulation. I'm already noticing that. That is very interesting to me. Where is the joint weakness here? I would not have expected to see a significant sway like that here. Let's pull this back and see if we can identify it. Presumably it's the docking port, but... it's this docking port. I would have expected these struts to deal with that. And these struts... That's very interesting. Why do we have a joint weakness there? Maybe it's this right here, between the small holding tank and the rechargeable batteries. Because I would have thought that everything would be strutted together pretty nicely here. There is this right here, but I would not expect that to be a significant issue. We could put struts here. I don't think that this is our problem, but we can do that. And then we can run some struts here. This is, in my opinion, unlikely to be our problem, but I suppose it's theoretically possible. I don't like the way that that connected. I don't like the way that that connected either. We really don't like connecting here. Let's actually just put this back out on the pad and see if these struts... There's no way that these struts fixed that. We need to identify where this joint weakness is. Because I don't see a problem there, but there clearly was one. So the question is where? It's right here. That's very intriguing. Okay, I'm going to lift this thing off. It's going to go horribly wrong. I want to verify our positioning on this. I believe that this joint is our weakness. Yeah, that's confirmed. Huh. There's also a joint weakness here. This is very entertaining, though. I'm actually shocked that the struts that we have aren't dealing with this. Okay, let's pull these back, and let's redo those struts. Maybe they're somehow bugged. So if we look at this, we know that there's a joint weakness right here, apparently, which is surprising. Let's redo the struts right up over here. I wonder if it's actually due to the radial symmetry, because this is not technically radial here. I'm going to take these off for now. I'm going to put these on one at a time. Just absolutely manual. I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to do this right here, duplicate this guy, and put it out over here. We're doing these singleton at this point because I suspect that these are not as attached as we would like them to be. So now I'm going to do the same thing right here, the same thing right here, and the same thing right here. And then we're going to do that right here as well. So here to... Yeah, see, it doesn't like attaching to the rechargeable battery banks here. Indeed. Yeah, definitely does not like that. So what we could do is we could take this out of here. I would like to do that. And then we could put something here that we can attach to, like an adapter, but this would not be like a fuel adapter. We'd just do a small adapter kind of like this. And then that's even going to need to go up a little bit further, so about like that. And then we can do our struts here. So this we could probably do in quad. And connect it like that. That's probably going to be more solid. And let's make these be like dark colored. This one doesn't have a dark option, so I guess that's going to have to do. So then we've got this up over here, and I want to just manually strut this. I want to make sure that this is connected properly. So one there, one there, one there, and one there. Let's see if that is strutting correctly. That should, in theory, be a lot more stable. We'll see. We do have a lot of joints there, but it really felt like those struts weren't actually connected together. They weren't providing rigidity. So we'll see if this is actually working correctly. Otherwise, we have a limp spaghetti noodle, and that's, not great. So that's definitely a lot better. Elasticity still exists up here, specifically in these batteries, and that may be a design flaw. Let's see how it goes if we do an actual launch here. Note, not an actual launch. This is a simulated launch, but let's see how it goes if we attempt to make some sort of launch here. We're watching elasticity here, but the question is, are we going to have significant bending? Also, we're pulling fuel from here, correct? Yeah, and this is definitely going to be burnt out before the SRBs are. Okay, so we see an oscillation build up here, and this is definitely being caused by the batteries. Okay. So what can we do about that? Well, we can put an object up here at the top, and we can connect struts from here all the way up to there, instead of this connection, which is clearly not, 100% working. Okay, so yeah, that's significant. No doubt about that. So that's happening because there is apparently a joint issue between these banks and potentially this small holding tank. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pop all of this off. And we're going to take this adapter here. So we're going to just search for adapter. And I believe that was this bad boy. And we're just going to put that right there like that. So now that there's an adapter there, that was metal. Okay, sure. That's what that has to be. So now that that's there, the question is, can we just run struts from here to here? And the answer is yes. That should hopefully solve that particular elasticity issue. Those should be rigid, but apparently they're not when you have that many of them stacked together. Good to know. It's absolutely fine. We just want them to be rigid. So now, of course, we just need to determine if indeed we are solid and how our ascent is looking. So let's get this loaded in. That looked much more rigid. Okay, that looks great. Let's see if it remains great as we go up. So let's be fairly aggressive on this gravity turn, because now what I want to do is I want to be checking for... I want to aerodynamically stress test this. So we're going to be going over to prograde at an apoapsis of probably 10 kilometers. We're watching for oscillations developing. we are watching for loss of attitude, which will be extremely obvious. There's an oscillation occurring up here. The root of that oscillation is down here, I think, or maybe here. There's definitely an oscillation occurring there, and it's not improving. Okay. Let's pull that back. The root of the issue was, in fact, the joint between our rocket and our lander. So that's right down here. This was the root of the issue there. So what I want to do is I want to put a strut in here to here, duplicate that, here to here, duplicate that, here to here, and duplicate that here to here. Then we're going to run a strut from here to here, and we're going to duplicate that here to here, here to here, and here to here. That was definitely a large improvement, but it wasn't perfect. So now the question is, what do we think about the joint here? I'm thinking if we take another set of struts like this, that'll probably solve it. So that'll be 8 additional struts. This is a lot of struts, no doubt about it. And we might remove some of these once we have them actually on the colony. But for now, they'll do absolutely fine. We just want this thing a lot more rigid than it is right now. So something about like that should do the trick. Hopefully that will reinforce that joint somewhat. We'll see. So let's see if that gives us extra stability here. If this doesn't give us extra stability, I don't know. There's a lot of awkward forces going on here, for sure. Our core appears to be made entirely out of spaghetti. So, you know, that's exciting. We'll hop over to surface up as soon as we get loaded in. That looked a lot more rigid again, so that's good. And let's try this again. We're simulating it once more. Aerodynamics are still an untested concern, and timings are still an untested concern. We've addressed many issues with this so far. And another potential issue is one of communications range. That's probably not a huge issue, but we may want to consider having a satellite dish on this of some sort. I'm watching our pitch here and noting that there's, if we go back into, let's see, if we go back into docking mode here, you can see our pitch has a distinct oscillation occurring. That's noted. It appears to have, okay, it's starting to build up. Let's take this over to orbital prograde. This is going to be intense. Very much so. So, clear aerodynamic issues here. But the bigger issue remains that this is composed primarily of spaghetti. So I kind of wonder, let's bring this back to launch. What is creating the amount of force that we're seeing here? Because it takes a lot of force to bend it like that. So that's very, very interesting. What I'm wondering at this moment is what would happen if we pan the camera a little bit so we can see a little bit better and get up underneath here. I can't really get there from here. Aha. Okay, so we've got this Probodobodyne Octo 2 here. This has an antenna in it, but what it does not have is a gyroscope. We don't have a gyroscope on this at all, do we? That is correct. We do not. Let's pull this back to vehicle assembly. We can toss a gyroscope up into the area up here by removing this guy, taking out the Probodobodyne Octo 2, and replacing that with a remote guidance unit of the appropriate size. That's an extra small. It's this size. So with that there, we shouldn't need these struts. That'll make things easier for us. That'll put a gyroscope up here, which might make the problem worse. What were we controlling? Or we were controlling from the Octo 2 previously. We probably do want to have an antenna on this. Question is where? We could just have a small antenna that can be furled, nestled in like over here for now. That can always be moved later on, or we're probably better off mounting it about like that, or maybe about like that, and then that'll be extended like that later on. So something like that would solve that issue. Okay. So I want to see what this looks like with a gyroscope up there. We had no gyroscope whatsoever, which meant that we were just being buffeted by aerial forces and the thrust from our engine. So that's what was causing the bend there. That's very, very interesting because that's a lot of force that is required to do that. Through all those struts, that's kind of insane. So we might have to take this straight up for a very long time. We'll see, but I want to do another test with a gyroscope on there and see what a gyroscope actually does. So let's go ahead and run this. This could make the oscillations worse, or it could smooth them out, and I'm honestly not sure which it'll be. So we're keeping an eye on this here. We can definitely see pitch and yaw oscillations. But the whole ship is allegedly undergoing that. It's this up here, though. So there's definitely still joint weakness there. Yeah, you can definitely see these oscillations are getting substantially worse. We're now maxing out the yaw. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Okay. Well, that pretty much tells us what we need to know. And what we need to know is that we need to run much, much more extensive struts. Specifically, what we need is we need a strut that is going to connect from here. And actually, I'm just going to reuse this. So we're going to connect that strut to here. It does not want to actually connect there. Interesting. Is that a distance issue? I've never seen a distance issue in KSP before with struts, but maybe. Maybe we can only take the strut down to here. If that's the case, that's okay. We'll run the strut like that. And in fact, this is in symmetry, so we're probably absolutely fine to just do this in symmetry mode. So we'll run the strut like this. There we go. And then a strut connector is going to come from here. This is in dual symmetry, which seems fine. We're going to connect like that. And then I also want to connect just below it. Actually, from below, maybe. Down to here. And then the same thing like that. So many struts right in this area, but we clearly need more strut work. So let's see how that goes. That might give us some additional rigidity, because this is joining the top section to the bottom section more directly. Rather than trying to add strength to the joint, we're trying to give the entire structure rigidity with these. So that should definitely do something. That should add some amount of rigidity. This is still kind of wild how many struts we've got on this thing. Okay, let's give this a go. No pitch oscillation this time. No yaw oscillation. At least not yet. That may have fixed it. As long as we have rigidity, we're good. We can always remove struts when we get there and use them to strut things together on the surface. I see a little bit of pull to the yaw and a little bit of pull to the pitch, but I'm not seeing any oscillation occurring. That looks very, very good. We're going to stress test this. This is, again, simulated. We're going to stress test this by going directly to prograde once we hit 10 kilometers. This is going to be a very difficult thing for this rocket to pull off. I don't expect success here. We're probably going to overshoot this and flip. That's exactly what's happening. Okay. So that's good to know. That flip is, of course, very bad. We don't want that to occur. But it only happened once. Okay, now we're going to flip again. I expected us to be under control that time. I'm just watching the aerodynamics for right now. We look very rigid, so rigidity is not an issue at this moment. Of course, we're in a wacky inclination now, and we don't want to be in this inclination, but this is now under control. The next thing I want to test is what our thrust to weight is going to look like once our side boosters detach, and how clean that detachment is. Not at all. Okay, good to know. Well, given our attitude, I'm not surprised about that. So let's pull this back, and aerodynamics are an absolute issue. We can toss on some fins onto the end of the rocket proper, and that'll probably solve the issue. We could do Delta Deluxe winglets. We could do, like, tail fins. I think Delta Deluxes will be fine. So let's bring this up to 4. There we go. Something about like that, although that's not correct spacing. There, about like that. That'll give us a lot more aerodynamic control, although they do appear a bit small. Maybe we do want tail fins on this. Do we have tail fins unlocked? Yes. Yes, we do. Okay. Let's get rid of these guys, and let's put on tail fins. There we go. Right about like that. Tail fins are a much bigger control surface. So it is time to put a cut in here, but I want to run this one more time real quick. We just want to check the aerodynamics on the pitch over there. So as long as our aerodynamics are reasonable, it should be fine. Keep in mind, we can always just go straight up and then over once the SRBs are clear. But those SRBs not being clear is going to be a potentially large problem for us, with them dropping straight down instead of having side ejection. We could use separatrons, or we could just alter our overall trajectory. And I suspect that's what we're going to end up doing. So let's put ourselves into surface up, throttle up, and let's go. So off we go here. We'll see how it goes with the tail fins. Once again, we're going up to a 10-kilometer apoapsis. We'll keep an eye on our thrust to weight here. We'll be moving much faster if we don't have 2 flips. That's for sure. That cost us an awful lot of speed. But let's just bring this right on up, and then we'll stress test it. So we're going to move over to orbital prograde here in a moment. We're at a 3-kilometer apoapsis. We're doing this at 10, and that is very, very strenuous on this. With the tail fins, it might be a little bit more maneuverable. We'll see. But I still expect this to have some aerodynamic issues. Straight up might be the way to go until the SRBs detach. So we should stress test it. Let's see how this goes. Overshoot. I'm not surprised about that one. Yep. This seems very expected. So that was very similar to the last attempt. Very, very similar. However, this looks like this might be much more under control. Yeah, only the one flip there. Okay. Ascent profile is definitely the way to solve that. That was a stress test. That is not... Oh, what is this? That's an awkward tumble. Definitely not the direction I expected that tumble to be in. I didn't expect a second tumble, to be honest. Okay, so our SRBs are off at this point, and this is a bad attitude for them to detach in. But okay. This is a very bad attitude to detach them in. This detachment is going to go poorly. Okay, we lost one of our fins on that detachment, and that's, of course, a pretty catastrophic failure. But that was a stress test. That's not a realistic ascent profile. So let's pull this back, and at this point, I'm fairly convinced that we'll be okay, as long as we're careful with the ascent trajectory. So I think we're ready to run this, but it is time to put a cut in. It's past time. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, we're going to get this thing up and away. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Aurelio, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.